California landlord laws. What self-managing landlords must know. Updated laws and compliance. If you're self-managing a rental property in California right now, there's a good chance something changed this year that affects you directly. And I'm not talking about a technically buried in 40-page bill. I'm talking about rent increase limits, deposit rules, and notice requirements. The things that you're actually doing every day as a landlord. I'm Candace, I manage properties in Orange County, and I want to make sure you're not making decisions based on last year's rules. So let's go through what's current. Rent increase limits under AB 1482. Let's start with rent increases because this is where I see the most unintentional mistakes. Under AB 1482, California's Tenant Protection Act, most landlords are capped at 5% plus local CPI, or 10% total, whichever is lower. And that's not just a suggestion, that is the ceiling. And here's the piece that surprises people. You can't stack increases. So if you didn't raise last year and you don't get to double up this year, each increase has to be standing on its own within that one 12-month window. So if your property is exempt, newer construction, single-family homes with proper disclosure, the cap does not apply. But that exemption has to be documented correctly. So if you're not sure whether your property is covered, that's worth finding out before your next increase. California just updated its rent increase rules, and here's what the cap actually is right now. Under 1482, most California landlords are capped at 5% plus local CPI or 10% total, whichever is lower. That number applies per 12-month period. Two things that catch landlords off guard. First, you can't bank unused increases from prior years. And second, some cities have their own lower caps on top of the state limit, so your city's rules might be tighter than your state's. And if you're planning a rent increase and haven't checked whether your property is covered and what the current local rate is, do that first. It takes about 10 minutes and saves a lot of headache. Also take a look if your property is at a time period when California has a state of emergency. Very important to double check. Security deposit rules. What has changed? California's security deposit law has changed. Under AB 12, most landlords are now limited to only 1 month's rent as a security deposit, regardless of whether the unit is furnished. That's a reduction from the prior limit of 2 months for unfurnished and 3 months for furnished. There are limited exceptions. Small landlords who own no more than 2 residential rental properties, but for most people, 1 month is the new cap. If you collected more than that on a lease signed after the effective date, that's worth reviewing. Also worth knowing, the 21-day deadline to return deposits has not changed, but the documentation requirements have gotten more specific. Itemized deductions need to be supported by receipts or invoices for amounts over certain thresholds. General cleaning without documentation is not going to hold up the way it used to. California changed the security deposit rules. Here's what landlords need to know now. AB 12 limits most California landlords to 1 month's rent as a security deposit. And that's it, regardless of whether the unit is furnished. The 21-day return window still applies, but now deductions over a certain amount require actual receipts or invoices and a line item statement that says cleaning -300. Without documentation, it is not going to hold up. If you collect a deposit under the old rules and the tenancy is still continuing, you're not required to refund the difference immediately. But new leases need to be under the new cap. Notice requirements, the numbers most people get wrong. Notice periods are one of those areas where being slightly wrong means starting completely over. So let's just go through the current numbers clearly. For rent increases, if the tenant has lived there less than 12 months, 30-day notice. More than 12 months, 60 days. For a 3-day notice to pay rent or quit, the amount has to be exact, not approximate. The day count starts the day after service, not the day of, and the method of service has to be documented: personal service, substituted service, with mailing, or posting with mailing. Each has a specific requirement. If it's not done right, the whole notice is void. The most common notice period mistake California landlords make and how to avoid it. Here's the one that gets landlords. The rent increase notice period is 30 days for tenants under 12 months and 60 days for tenants over 12 months. There's a couple exceptions, such as Section 8, but on a 3-day notice period to pay rent or quit, the dollar amount has to be exactly correct. If you include fees or utilities that aren't specifically allowed under the lease, the notice fails. No late fees in the 3-day notice. And the method of service matters as much as the content. Personal delivery, substituted service, or posting and mailing, each has its own documentation requirement. So if you can't prove how it was served, it doesn't hold up. The lease clause most California landlords forget, and why it matters more than you think. A maintenance reporting clause. Not just a general statement that the landlord will maintain the property, a specific process. How does the tenant notify you? In writing? By email? What's the expected response window? Without that clause, you're relying on informal communication. And in a habitability dispute, informal communication is very hard to track and very easy to dispute. A written maintenance process also signals to the tenant from day one that this is a professional operation. That tone tends to hold through the whole tenancy. What California landlords need to know about emotional support animals and why no pets doesn't cover it. Under California and federal fair housing law, emotional support animals are not pets. A no pets clause does not apply to them. If a tenant requires an ESA accommodation, you generally cannot deny it unless the animal poses a direct threat or causes undue hardship, and both of those have high legal bars. So you can request documentation, but only from a qualified healthcare provider, and you can't charge a pet deposit for an ESA. The process matters here. How you respond to an ESA request, what you ask for, how quickly you respond, how you document it, all of it can become relevant in a fair housing complaint if ever filed. Having a written process is the best protection. California law moves fast, and self-managing means staying current on all of it yourself. The landlords who do it well aren't the ones who have a law degree. They're the ones with good systems and a habit of reviewing their documents at least once a year. If you have questions about your specific situation, your lease, your deposit structure, your notices, I am happy to be a resource. That's why I'm here. See you on the next one.